Okay. And here we go. Oh, actually, I wanted to do one more thing. Jennifer, Jennifer Greenblatt, I've made you a co-host as well, just so that if there is a procedural issue, I don't think there will be, we're not voting on resolutions, but if there is, you can jump in. And I'll try to remember to do that at calendar meetings as well. Okay. So let's get started. Welcome, everyone. This is the working business meeting of CEC District 2 for June. Vincent Hom, our secretary, I'll ask you to note the presence of all council members in lieu of a formal roll call. I also welcome our guests, the Superintendent of District 2, Donalda Chumney, and Family Leadership Coordinator, Jennifer Greenblatt, and the DOE Face Liaison, Michelle Chang. And Michelle, thank you as always for assisting. We have our, before we get to our 2 agenda items, I'll make some announcements. We have our annual meeting, followed directly by our July calendar meeting coming up on July 8th. Zoom details are on the website, cecd2.net. We also have a July working business meeting at which district planning will present an analysis of District 2 planning concerns on July 16th. The July working business meeting and this working business meeting are different than calendar meetings, and there's no public comment. It's a public meeting, but there's no public comment, although all guests are welcome to stay and hear throughout the whole meeting. On our upcoming calendar, we also have a NYC Community Engagement session in late July that will be via Zoom. That meeting date should be confirmed and posted this week. Dr. Eddie Fergus will present the data that he presented at the first session, and we will be able to record it and make it available to everyone. It was a really useful and really helpful presentation at the first NYC community meeting. Can we get folks to just mute themselves if they're not speaking? It would be helpful with the noise. And then we, and it was, since that was pre-COVID and we weren't recording things, we didn't get that recorded. So I'm actually very happy that Dr. Fergus, that we'll be able to have that presentation, that people who can't attend the meeting will be able to hear it in the future. I'll also note that this meeting is being recorded and will be posted on our YouTube CEC page website. Now, moving on to more wonderful things. School's over. I had 2 graduates in my home last week, and it was a really joyous week. Congratulations to all the graduates. The CEC Zoom, which we are using now, was borrowed by 3 schools in our district to host graduations that allowed for multiple family members to attend. And I attended my 8th grade son's graduation. And like I said, it was truly joyous. And thank you to all the principals, teachers, and administrators who made the graduations throughout our district wonderful and special during this challenging time. I see we have some parent guests, and I will say, in case anyone is wondering, we do not have any information from the DOE about any concrete reopening plans or how admissions process will work for next year for middle school or high school. So if folks are here to ask about that or wonder about that, again, it's not, there is no public session and we do not have any additional information about that. We have 2 agenda items, and I will address both of them and then open up the meeting to council members. The first is very short, the second is a little bit longer. The first agenda item is the role of the DOE in CEC meetings. There does seem to be some confusion about the interplay between the CEC and the DOE. And just to clarify, the CEC is an autonomous parent body. We are not run by the DOE, our agenda is not approved by the DOE, and we are not appointed or selected by the DOE. DOE employees do attend our meetings. The CEC is responsible for issuing the annual evaluation of the superintendent, who is here as our guest. The second agenda item is agreement on norms for CEC D2. This item, I have a few things to say about. If you give me a moment, I will get there. We, as CEC members, work in service to the families of District 2. We owe it to the families of this district, as well as the educators who work so hard to teach our children, to do better than we did at our June 11th calendar meeting. The norms of this council that we must establish and adhere to must include that members address each other, DOE employees, or members of the public in a respectful manner. I read an open letter that Shino Tanakawa penned to me last week. I have responded to that letter and shared my response with members of this council. Shino wrote that there was dysfunction and division in this council. I concur. In fact, as I wrote to all of you, to council members, after the June 11th calendar meeting, the ugliness of that meeting is exactly why I tried for several months to get the members of this council to agree to a norming session where every one of us could engage in the hard work of overcoming the dysfunction and division that Shino noted. As you may recall, I reached out to Marisol Rosales, the Manhattan Executive Superintendent, and she in turn recruited Nancy Gutierrez, the Executive Director of the New York City Leadership Academy, a nonprofit dedicated to equity, who agreed to lead that session. And let's see. I'm working off of a small screen, guys. With regard to the norming session that I proposed, 4 members of this council refused to participate. The refusal was and is a deep disappointment because all members of this council must be willing to engage with the other members. We owe it to the families of this district to at least try to find ways to work more collaboratively and successfully with each other. The failure to do so is certainly part of what went wrong on June 11th. I am deeply committed to the work of this council. In addition to many other efforts, I have worked for 2 years on the New York State Integration Project in an effort to advance the incredibly important work of desegregating our district, and I will continue to do so. The work of making sure that all students have access to desegregated schools is vitally important for our students and for our city. I am committed to listening to the concerns of all the families in this district in order to craft solutions that respect the broad array of convictions and belief that parents in this district have shared with us meeting after meeting regarding the education of their children. Finally, some members of this council have taken to social media to address council matters. The appropriate place to discuss council matters is at open public meetings like this one, at either a working business meeting or a calendar meeting, and I will continue to do so. I strongly suggest others do as well. Toward that end, I will remind you that we are all co-hosts of this meeting. If there is language or behavior that any one of you think is inappropriate or violative of the values you hold individually, or that we hold as a council, you should speak up. You should address the person whose words or behaviors are violative of the norms and standards that you believe must be honored. I stand firmly and unequivocally against racism. We all have an affirmative obligation to oppose racism. It is possible to condemn racism and at the same time to extend grace and compassion to the people who disappoint you. I have been disappointed by the conduct of several people on this council, including Eric Goldberg, Tom Rockledge, and others. I encourage them to commit themselves to do better in the future. We must, as a council, find a better way to address fellow council members and parents who are trying to navigate our shared school communities, address the vital issues confronting students and families, and positively impact the education of the students we serve. At this point, I'm going to open this up to any council members who want to address either or both of these points and or agenda items, or if there are additional items that a council member would like to address.
I guess I'd start with a quick question, Maude. So just to be very straightforward and clear, which I think your statement was very hollow based on your actions over the past 3 years as a member of this council. And I think it's offensive to the other council members that you sit here and speak to the council members and deny your culpability in creating an environment of division and divisiveness in this district, starting with leaks to the New York Post, attacks on fellow council members, And this is the fruit that you have borne, Maud, from your actions and activities. And you can hide from them and try to put on a public face that differs from your actions and activities, but we won't let that stand. So you could come here and talk to us about a period of reconciliation, but you need to act and show that you actually care about bridging this divide rather than speaking one thing publicly and doing something else privately. So that's for you to begin that process of healing, and hollow words on a call during a city council campaign will not do it.
And I want to jump in and say that you point to this norming session that you called for in September. You throw it at us as a way to show that you tried to make an effort. I want to recollect what brought you to making that recommendation. My recollection is that there were disagreements on the council about how to select a meeting date. We had a meeting date selected. You unilaterally changed it. That seems petty as a thing to call into, to draw attention to. And frankly, that's why I think some of us didn't choose to fight about that. But you changed it unilaterally. You never explained why. You tried to co-opt an assembly members meeting, a forum, turn it into a public meeting that happened to have what would be a quorum, tried to declare it a quorum so you could change the meeting date to a date you selected. This all happened before you called for the norming session. Personally, you approached me at the beginning of that meeting to tell me I was only invited there by mistake, that I didn't belong there, which again, who cares? I knew I was invited there, but what kind of person comes up to a human being at the beginning of a forum and says, you don't belong here? Unless you're trying to undermine. And then you announce that we're gonna have a norming session. You don't explain what a norming session is. There's questions about who's gonna lead the norming session. You just say, no, I'm comfortable with this. And then you expect us to go ahead and agree to it. And frankly, I don't know, meeting norms? Our bylaws outline what the meeting norms are. They outline how we're supposed to call meeting dates. The biggest affronts are when the most simple rules in our meetings are, in our bylaws are ignored. And frankly, norms are not anti-racist training. They're not understanding how words are harmful. You didn't really, I don't know anyone that's written a letter to our CEC about any behavior Eric Goldberg has engaged in. We had over 100 parents write you a letter explaining why a member of this council was extraordinarily offensive and racist during a meeting. A meeting establishing norms, had that happened or not, does not explain why a member of our council was racist, and you did nothing, and I did nothing, and I'm ashamed I did nothing, and I can sit here on a public meeting and say, I'm sorry, I made a mistake. I didn't speak out verbally when multiple times during a meeting, one of the members of our council engaged in behavior that made me ache and hurt for the non-white people that were logged in, and that I knew people checked out of the meeting. And that is my failure. And I can say that. And you had 100 parents write you a letter, and who responded? Our vice president, who had one vote. He is for all the efforts that people on this council make to talk about appropriately representing the district. A person with one vote in our CEC elections wrote a letter talking about freedom of speech and how that somehow is a defense to upset and harm parents in our community, that they check out of our meetings. You talk about a town hall about our NYC grant coming up in the end of July. Who's gonna show up to that is already upset and harmed by the violent harmful language that took place at our June 11th meeting. Nobody, none of those voices are going to be present. But I can say I made that mistake by not speaking out. And you lump Eric in with the behavior that happened at June 11th. We have almost 100 parents that wrote to you and want you to denounce what happened at that last meeting. And you've done nothing. You've called out Shino, you call out Shino, who is citywide known as a voice for equity, for anti-racism. That's who you target as a political appointee. And you will not, and you say you speak out against racism, and I would like to hear you and the people that are logged into this meeting and the people that wrote that letter and the people that were too intimidated to even sign that letter want to hear from you that you denounce that language, that CEC meetings should be safe spaces for everyone in this community to show up and speak their mind.
That's the response that comes when the overtures are so hollow and have nothing behind them except publicity. So when you're ready, Maude, this council is ready to move on and work for the children of our district. And we want to do that.
Are there any other council members who would like to speak?
Yes, I'd like to speak. And I'd like to respond to Robin and this one vote that I received. Robin, you don't know who I am. You don't know anything about me. You don't know about my background. You don't know about how I suffered in the public school system, a segregated public school system. You don't know how I was in foster homes. You don't know how I was homeless. You don't know how I felt when I tried to educate myself in a segregated, underperforming public school. And now you, in your comfortable white world, can tell us about how we ought to reach down and help the poor Latino and help the poor Black, condescendingly look at us as if we are inferior. Okay, condescendingly tell us we've received one vote and you ought not to sit next to me because I am Robin Brochi, I am Eric Goldberg. Okay, that's what you want to do. But what I want to tell you and Eric is what you're proposing is hollow, because never, never do I see anyone or any of these advocates really in communion with these poor students that are not getting the education that they deserve. Do you understand that? Now tell me about my one vote. Maybe I have one vote because people like you keep us out of these opportunities to speak. Perhaps you don't want me to speak. Perhaps you'd rather me be quiet. Well, I won't be quiet because I have a voice, Miss Brochi, and I have a voice, Miss Tanakwala, and Mr. Goldberg. I have a voice now, and that's what we want. We want Black liberation. We want Latino liberation. We want you to respect us. Do you understand that? We don't want handouts. We don't want to be said, oh, come to Clinton, come to Beacon with my child because you're inferior, and perhaps some of our intelligence can rub off on you. But I see through this nonsense, and I see through this racism, and I understand it. And I am going to vote no when I see all of these nonsensical diversity positions that lack substance, that are really cosmetic in nature. cosmetic diversity. That's what you're looking for. You're not looking for true change. You're not looking to really educate all of the people of this district. You're comfortable in your capitalist, unbridled capitalist world. You don't want to teach Latinos and Blacks fractions and decimals and how not to get ensnared in these mortgages where they're adjustable rate. And so you don't want to teach them that, because that's how you remain comfortable. That's how you remain where you are. Do you understand? Well, I have one vote, and I'm going to make the most of this one vote. Okay, and I'm not going to listen to any of this nonsense anymore, because Shino doesn't want to listen to me, because she thinks that I'm not worthy, you see, of being in the diversity committee, because I'm an inferior Latino. That's what you think, and that's what Eric thinks. You understand? Well, the Latinos and the African Americans of this city are not going to be fooled. Do you understand that? Are not going to be fooled. And I have one vote, but I am your vice president. And I have one vote, and I am Eric Goldberg's vice president. And I have one vote, and I support my president, Maud Marone, in what she's doing and what she's trying to do. Because leadership, you see, is about building coalitions with people that you disagree with. It's about reaching out to Maud, reaching out to Len, reaching out to Ben, and trying to make progress. It's not about showboating and white fragility and all this nonsense that doesn't make a child learn, that doesn't teach a poor kid anything. Okay, so Ms. Broshi, before you start making accusations about me, about my one vote, you ought to get to know me. You ought to sit down and have lunch with me. But perhaps you don't know very many Latino people, and you don't have lunch with them. Perhaps you don't know very many poor Blacks, to understand. So before you make these conclusions and draw these assumptions, you ought to get to know me. And you know, I'd like to get to know you. I'd like to get to know Shino, but for some reason, I don't deserve a say. And that's all I have to say. And I agree, and I support Maud Marone, and I support what she's doing with the NYC grant and the integration effort. And I'm sure that we can get there if you just let her work, and if you, in good faith, reach out to her and to others that don't happen to disagree with your hollow and shallow diversity pronouncements. Thank you very much.
Yes,
So,
well, let me be clear.
Edward, actually, Eric, can I please jump in? And
I'd like to give other council
no.
members a chance
I want to say
speak
something, because I was
before we-
called out by name multiple times.
That's fine,
And I
Robin,
want
you
to
can go
admit
ahead
I
and
made
speak.
a mistake. I want to admit, Edward, I want to apologize to you. Edward, are you going to give me a space to apologize?
Would you
And
like me to
I
leave?
want to acknowledge that
You're
calling out the one vote was an example of white privilege, and it was an example of trying to silence the legitimacy of your space on this council.
Well, you
That
should
was a
read White
mistake.
Fragility and
And
understand what
I
she
am
says in White
apologizing. Edward, I am apologizing, and you don't have to accept my apology. And there's work, everyone has work to do, and I have work to do. I have 40 plus years of white supremacy I need to undo. And that was unfair of me to make that point. And I don't want to silence your voice. And your voice has merit, Edward. And I did sit with you at before this council started. And I would talk to you again. And I'm sorry and I acknowledge that my words hurt you. And I'm sorry that I haven't been able to express the way that I feel that the NYC grant in its current form is a deficit mentality and is born of the deficit narrative. And I hear what you're saying about what white savior complex is, and this idea of throwing non-white students a bone and say, hey, you need some extra points to get into Clinton. And that hurts me. And that's why this NYC grant hurts me, because I hear it as a way of not acknowledging the merit that a kid when I hear our superintendents say that we have to adjust for kids that get 1s and 2s, and that when we have to adjust for kids that come from Title I schools, all I hear is that those kids need extra support. And I want a model that says every kid brings something special, and that the traditional metrics that we use to measure children, whether it's test scores or grades, is a way to marginalize students that are traditionally Black and Hispanic. And if you hear it a different way, and if you think the NYSIP grant is actually in a language that celebrates those students, I want to hear that. I do want to hear that from you. And I shouldn't have minimized your voice, because you are the vice president of this council. But I also feel, and look, I know I'm very vocal right now, but I actually tend to be quiet at these meetings. I don't like to make noise. I'm very conflict averse. I had a lot of feedback from parents that wrote that letter to Maud Marin, not to you, Ed. You're vice president. That's important. Maud is the president of this council, and it hurt them that there was harmful language at our last meeting that she did not respond to, that she asked you to respond to. And I would, and the reason I am calling out and I'm asking Maud's response is because that's who the letter was written to. It was not written to the vice president of this council.
May I speak, please? Can you hear me?
Yes, Tom, I can hear you.
You can? Okay, thank you. Robin, I would like to directly ask you a question. You alleged racist behavior. What exactly was that racist behavior about having my friend of 5 years over my house in my living room with her daughter, who is best friends with my daughter, and her nephew? What is racist about that? Please explain. What you have committed is slander. Go ahead.
I don't think this is a forum for direct Q&A. I don't think it's a forum for direct Q&A.
I'm asking her directly. I don't care what
I
you do.
don't.
Tom, I'll answer your question. I have no faith that you will, I'm not going to change your mind, but I will say that proximity to, so it's the distinction between individual acts of proximity to color does not mean you're not racist. Strom Thurmond was
about my behavior during that meeting that you just alleged?
Tom, when you said my living room is integrated right now as a response to discussion of systematic racism, no, it wasn't. You had friends over. That's not integration. Integration is a system. Tom, I don't know what to tell you. I know that you believe that you did nothing wrong, but you have 100 people that told you. I am not calling you racist. I said that was racist behavior. Tom, you sue me. Did you read Ibram Kendi? Did you read How to Be an Anti-Racist?
That does not make me racist for not reading that book.
I'm not calling you racist. I'm saying I'm saying that was racist behavior. We are all capable of racist behavior. I am capable of racist behavior. I owned up to it in this meeting right now when I apologize to Edward for minimizing his one vote. All people are capable of racist behavior, and we should apologize when we offend people of color, when they get upset, when they say this is a harmful space, when they log out of a meeting immediately because they see white people exhibiting their power over people of color. So it's not my job to convince you. If you won't even read a book about white fragility or Ibram Kendi, I can't sit here in a working business meeting and educate you about the distinction between interpersonal racism and systemic racism. I have no right to speak.
I got it.
Tom, she did not say you have no right to speak. You asked her a question and she answered it.
And you kept cutting me off because you didn't like the answer.
What was racist about what I did?
I told you what was racist about it, Tom.
You did not.
And I can find 100 other parents that would tell you the same thing. And you're choosing not to listen to it.
That would say you're a racist. I could find parents that would say there's cognitive.
They say I'm racist. That's the difference between you and me, Tom. If people tell me I'm racist, I want to hear it and I want to learn from it, and I'm not going to get defensive.
Send your daughter to the whitest, most exclusive screen school In all of District
You
2.
know what?
Go ahead.
I did that. Do you think that that's a Trump point that you drag my children into this conversation?
So I
Where
think
my
there's a
children
difference
go to
between
school?
what you say and your behavior.
Excuse
My behavior? I've
Correct.
never, this is like the
Okay,
most
guys.
outraged I've ever behaved at a meeting. I've only been polite. I've been too polite, Tom. I let you post whiteboards. I let you insult me
That was
and Eric and Sheena over and over again. You called
Your
out
insulting
Emily's
is only
house
because
at a
that
meeting,
is the
and
actual
I said
truth.
nothing. My failure was saying nothing. My failure was being too polite to people like you.
What exactly was incorrect about what I wrote on the whiteboard, Robin?
It was
Hey,
a
guys, listen,
personal
just one quick
attack,
thing.
Tom.
Okay. What was
Just one
incorrect?
thing.
What's actually
Let's
incorrect?
just say
Go ahead.
very clearly, this
Okay.
is the atmosphere that the Maud Marin presidency has brought.
And the
this
Eric
is
Goldberg
the
tenure.
culmination
Eric
of
Goldberg has been on the
24 months
council for
of-
10 years.
it's
Nothing
funny.
like this has ever happened.
That's incorrect, but go ahead.
Yeah. So, guys, I think that this is just symptomatic of where we are.
Okay.
And it doesn't seem like there's much value coming out of this conversation to me for tonight. So, seems like we've said, unless there's other people want to talk, feels like we should adjourn.
Eric, I'll run the meeting. Thank you. Are there other council members who want to speak?
Yeah, I would just like to say something. You know, part of the problem here, first of all, I don't know if it was Eric or Robin, one of you made a comment about a campaign. There's a lot of this going on where we're trying to, where some people do things off site. And when I say off site, I mean on tweets and chat rooms and on Twitter and things like that. And they post comments and, you know, that's where these issues seem to be resonating and being fought out in these. So people are saying one thing here, but they're actually posting things privately. I don't think it's fair to go that route. So, I mean, I think if any of us have issues with any one of us, let's bring it here. Let's use this time that we have. Eric, I disagree with you. Let's use this time and try to just discuss these issues as best we can. And maybe we can come to some sort of consensus. Maybe we'll never agree, but maybe we can try to find, I've always tried to focus on the things that bring us together rather than the things that separate us. Maybe there's enough there. I mean, we're all elected. Maybe we can find something that we can agree on, even if it's a meeting date. But I don't think it's fair when we start posting things or tweeting things and attacking people off-site or privately, and then come here and say different things. So I just think everything should be out in the open. And if we have positions, and if you do that, I think it's fair game. I have to say, whatever we post, whatever we say, if that describes our positions, I think it's fair game. So I would like to try to use this time constructively, and maybe we can try to find things that we do agree on. I know we disagree on screening. I know there's 5 of us, 6 of us that feel one way, 4 of us that feel strongly another way. Maybe we can at least try to be constructive about how we approach this. But I don't think it's fair to bring up campaigns. I don't think it's fair to go that route. I just think that's really insinuating something that's inappropriate.
Right. Well, Lana, just when you say post, I mean, you're referring to the New York Post, or you're referring to social media? Because I know that there's a long history of feeding articles to the New York Post about conduct or polls that we do in this area. So.
Okay, Eric. Oh, okay, Eric. I don't know if you're insinuating that when you say polls, if that's a reference to the District 2 President's Council poll, because I can tell you I have never spoken to a reporter about polls. I'm unaware of anyone talking about that survey. So if it's a little bit of a try to way to work something in there, I will deny it.
No, it's not a dig. I'm just saying very directly that there's a continuing stream. Hey, I mean, let me give you one quick example. Sure. We had a meeting with the CEC, with the DOE, right, to talk about when we were going to have a meeting with the chancellor, right? The next morning, I think it was, the New York Post had a headline about us changing the site or potentially changing the site of the meeting. right? It was just our council members and the DOE in the meeting. And somehow the next day, there was a headline in the New York Post about potentially moving the meeting location. So clearly it was someone in the CEC who leaked it to the Post.
Okay, first of all, I never contacted the Post about it.
I'm not saying you.
Okay, but
I'm not saying you.
No, I understand what you're saying, but I think there's a big difference between when a newspaper chooses to report, whether it's based on information that they get from a CEC member, and what a CEC member is actually posting in a forum, on a chat board, on a tweet. I do find a distinction there. I mean,
Len, it's about
meetings are public. I mean, anybody can report. I mean, I don't know who was listening to meetings.
That wasn't a public meeting. That wasn't a public meeting, right? It's about the trust of this community. And let me bring up one other point, because I think that this is clear if we want to talk about trust and how we gain trust with each other. Even tonight's meeting, right? Tonight's meeting was rescheduled, right? We were given a scheduled date and told the meeting would be held, I believe it was last week. We inquired how that would happen. And I think Maud clearly wrote back, I did not send a doodle for this as we needed to accommodate district planning. At least to me, that implied that district planning only had one night and one time when they could meet. I'm very confident that that was not the case.
Eric, do you know who?
I'm unsure.
The New York
What's
Post.
that?
Are you aware of who leaked information? Are you aware of who leaked information to the New York Post? Yes or no?
I'm not, but I know who was on the
How do
call.
I know it's not you?
How
do I know it's not you? I didn't do it. How do I know it's not you?
Yes. That's an effective tool maybe for cross-examination, but that's the problem, is that we're not in a court of law. We're having a conversation. You know that's not the case. You know that's not the case, but it's a funny quip. It's cute. It's clever. I applaud you for it. It may work in another form.
So if you're going to make allegations, have some support.
Can I talk for a moment, please? It seems like one of the issues that's come up tonight are scheduled meetings. Okay, like I heard Robin mention something, you mentioned something. Can we at least, and that's an area where I think maybe we can make some progress. I mean, clearly there's some people are taking issue with the doodles, and I apologize because I'm usually the last person to respond, and everybody's always sending me a thing like, you got to fill out the doodle. So I'm sorry about that. But can we, maybe we can work on meetings. I mean, maybe we can just at least.
Len, it's in the bylaws. Len, our bylaws talk about it. There's no, it's like you talk about establishing norms, but like a norm has, in this council, has never been the president says, here's a date for the meeting. Like, it's like, it wouldn't even, it's like, it doesn't even occur to someone to say like, that should be something we agree on. Cause like, that's not how meetings are run. You don't vote on a date and then suddenly the president says, here's the new date. And then suddenly the president says, oh, we're all at Harvey Epstein's education forum. Let's vote on the new date. Like, you act like that's something that we have to collaborate on, but that's like an obvious, that's bylaws plus like obvious good faith collaboration. I was president for 3 years. Sometimes I had to miss a meeting because it was like the date before my daughter's bat mitzvah. I don't know. So I couldn't make a meeting. I wouldn't just be like, I can't make a meeting. Let's reschedule it. Like, the meeting date are the meeting dates. Why is that shouldn't even, like, I feel so stupid getting upset about it. Trust me, I know what I sound like here tonight. It feels so petty to get upset about it. But at the same time, like, that's an obvious thing that's like, we already agreed on these dates. These are the dates. No one is more special than anybody else. If someone can't make it, even if it's the president, then we still do it anyway. And the vice president runs the meeting. Maud ran meetings when I couldn't make them. I didn't agree with Maud on things, but I still trusted her to run a meeting.
And it seems obvious that, I don't know why the response is, this is the date that we had to accommodate district planning when it's clearly we didn't have to, that district planning was flexible. So it just feels insincere that note is sent out when it feels clear that that's not the case.
You know, I'm getting really sick and tired of hearing about dates when at the same time, in the same few sentences, you accuse people of racism when at the last meeting we had students, we had, 10 to 15 students talk about racism in their schools. And not one of you said, oh my God, there's a racist incident in your school. Let's see what we can do about it. Let's contact the DOE. Who have you contacted? Did you contact the principal? Did anybody care when we had students at last month's meeting and say, wait a second, we just heard student after student complain about racism in their schools. And not one of you said, let's stop this meeting and let's see how we help these kids. It's disgusting. And you are talking about meetings.
Hey, Ben, you think if you ask those students who's their ally, they'd say you and Maude? Do you think?
Oh, so you're very slick. Very slick. Thank you. You don't care about these kids. Edward Irizarry said it perfectly. You are being condescending to Latinos and to blacks, and it's sad.
Yes.
I feel
that's
sorry.
Right. That's right. When Black and Latino parent advocates tell me that I'm not doing enough to stand up to you and to Maude, that's me being patronizing. When they pull me aside and they say, you're too quiet in the meetings and you don't call out the racism when it happens, and that adds to our harm. That's me being
I spent a full year getting tweets from you people saying, it's toxic whiteness, I'm a white supremacist, I'm non-racist. I'm explaining to my father on Father's Day that you came to America. You had your parents killed in World War II. I'm telling my father he had his two younger brothers killed in a gas
I'm Jewish, Ben. I know how that story goes.
Well, thank you very little. My father went through that, but yet I have to hear people call me every time that I'm racist.
Ben, it's not about you and me. We all do racist things. We have to learn to hear about that. It's hurtful.
Hey, when kids are complaining about racism, did you stand up and say, what can we do about it in their schools? No, you didn't.
That's all I've been doing.
Our last meeting, you were talking about someone's friend on someone's lap, but when there were actual kids who were saying their racist acts in their school, sad. You are sad. But today you want to talk about
racist. It hurts people when they see a white man bouncing a brown baby on their lap and they don't know the context. That is harmful. That makes people cry. It makes people log out of our meetings. They don't come here. They don't come to our meetings, and they give me a hard time because I'm not vocal enough, and I'm not trying to be a martyr. I'm trying to illustrate to you that you think you think I'm a social justice warrior, and you think I'm being patronizing, and I'm getting pressure for not being enough of an advocate. And I take that to heart, and that hurts me, and I have to learn to make how to be a better white person.
I would like to know.
You don't have people telling you that.
I would like to know before this meeting adjourns how having my friend's nephew on my lap was hurtful to people and was racist. Can you please explain?
Tom, I've explained it to you. You can Google, you can read a book. Read Ibram Kendi, read White Fragility, read How to Talk to White People. No, it's not my job to educate you. You're an educated white man, and you can read a book.
My friend is going to educate you, Robin. My friend will educate you.
Hey, Tom, the fact is that what you did, the act that you did, first of all, it was purposeful, it was knowing.
You're describing intent.
Yes.
How are you describing my intent?
Yes, I am. And
you're a mind reader?
Yes. No, I'm not.
You're a mind reader. That's what you're explaining.
In the moment. And you heard people.
Watch me in the moment. Have my friend in my living room.
In your living room making a joke about segregation.
No, it was not a joke. Your actions are a joke.
You made a
intent. I had my friend over my living room, and you thought it was me.
And Tom, please let's let each other finish sentences. And I am going to let folks speak because it's quite apparent that people want to. I'm going to let folks speak, but I do want to use the back and forth and let people finish their statements. And then I also want to let council members who haven't had a chance to speak to one another. So Emily, you had started speaking. Please finish
Right.
what you have to say, Emily.
Thank you very much, Maude. I appreciate it. Here's the thing. I left that meeting. First of all, I had several friends who joined that meeting. They were interested in coming, new friends. People literally were texting me within the meetings, texting me saying, what the hell is going on? What is this? It seems like there is a council member making a joke about segregation. I literally was too embarrassed to even text back in that moment. I doubled back the next day. I actually was horrified with the premeditated obnoxiousness that you started off with the whiteboard, the premeditated. Excuse me.
Whiteboard? Yeah.
Yes, I am telling you. Okay, you had a premeditated agenda. You came to that meeting to rile it up. You started off by that. Then you had a smirk and a grin on your face when you pulled that child in. And then 3 minutes later, you in a joking tone said, oh yeah, my living room's integrated right now, in a joking tone, as if the hundreds of years of first slavery and then segregation were nothing and would go poof because you happen to have a black friend. It was so belittling. It was so snide. I cannot even explain how embarrassed I was to have that I had invited friends.
I'm talking.
So the fact that you didn't, perhaps you didn't intend it to be racist, and that does not matter, actually. It was racist by many.
Tell you why I was laughing. Do you mind?
No, I'm not finished.
I get as long as you get.
The fact is, it is something for which you need to look deep inside and say, wow, I heard a lot of people. Whether you intended to or not, you did. And honestly, you need to take a moment and a deep breath and think about what you are doing and how you are sitting on this council. I cannot imagine that if we had been in a school setting, that you would have brought some whiteboard. The fact is, there are plenty of times that we don't get to talk or respond to people in the moment. We don't have a back and forth. And the fact is, you have absolutely exploited this medium to the detriment of everyone in our community. You have made a snide remark about my own home that made me feel embarrassed in front of this council. You have made nasty remarks, brought in whiteboards, pointing out things in such an unprofessional and unsuitable tone. It's beyond. You owe this council and our members, the people who come to our meetings, an apology. Yes, you do.
Okay, let me explain why I was laughing. First of all, I was holding a baby who was playing with something. That is a normal reaction. Second of all, when I said the statement that I did, which was factually correct, that my living room was integrated at the moment. Don't roll your eyes, Emily. Don't roll your eyes. You did roll your eyes. Yeah. So I was also laughing at the absurdity of the cognitive dissonance of people like you. People exactly like you, who are telling people of color how they should feel. How absurd that is. And you have a couple of people, you take anecdotal evidence, you prescribe motive to things that you have no idea about, and then you demand an apology because you were offended, because that's how you felt. You have no idea what it means to be a person of color. You have no idea. I have no idea either how it feels. My friends do. My friends were insulted by your actions. They're continuously insulted by your actions. They're continuously insulted by people who send their kids to screen schools who are trying to get rid of screen schools. They're aware of the cognitive dissonance of your behavior. And I'm not finished because you went on and on and on and insulted me and slandered me, as well did Robin, on paper, in social media, supported letters that were factually incorrect. And I did not get any sleep for weeks after being accused as being a racist for having my friend in my living room with her daughter, who has been my friend's daughter for several years, and her nephew, who is learning how to walk. So take a look at yourself. You owe me an apology and you owe my friend an apology. Yeah, you can't believe it, can you?
No, I can't, and you will never get an apology from me for absolutely calling
Slander.
your
Okay, guys,
Slander.
I'm going, in an effort to move our meeting along, it's almost, we started a little late, but we're almost 1 hour into the meeting. I am going to query any council members who have not spoken and see if they want to speak at this time. And then I am going to invite, as is quite frequent, our superintendent, to hear from her if she wishes to speak. So are there any other council members who we have not heard from who would like to share anything on either of the two agenda items tonight? Vincent, I see you. Are you unmuted?
I think I am. Can you guys hear me?
Can you speak up, Vincent? Because you're soft.
All right. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
All right. So I will have to admit that I likewise did not understand what the racist behavior was that initiated all this discussion. And right now everyone's pretty excited. I don't know if that's a proper word for me to use, if I'll get in trouble for that, but people are animated about this. Maybe I just don't get it, but there was nothing that I saw that was overtly racist. And I hear folks saying, I am offended, or I'm offended for you, I'm offended for you. I personally was not offended by what occurred during the meeting. I found it in possibly poor taste, but that was the extent of it. So if I need to be educated, well, you know, I'd like to hear exactly what is racist about what happened without having to read a book. And so if that's spelled out for me, fine, I'd like to listen to that. As for, you know, Tom's behavior, you know, maybe he could have made some better choices, but calling that racist, I don't know that I'm not convinced. So I need to hear more about why that is racist before I can get on that, sign on to that point.
Are there any other council members who would like to speak at this point?
I'd like to speak. I have a lot to say, but I'll keep it short. This just illustrates to me the need for anti-racism training, because some of you definitely, including myself, actually, I would say all of us, don't have the language to really talk about this in a way that's constructive and productive and growth oriented. And I have done my own work, and some of you have done work with the CEC. Marisol hosted Courageous Conversations, and some of you attended. But clearly, we need more of it. And that was really the intent of my letter to you, Maud. I don't see you doing the work. That's just how I see things. You can say racism is wrong, we'll denounce it, but the bottom line is how you act. And your action has not shown to me that you understand what racism is at the structural and institutional level, which is fine because I don't claim to understand it. I'm still learning. I read a lot. Vincent, there is no way around it. You have to read. If you're not willing to read, then you're not doing the work. And this is work we all have to do. And you can disagree with people, but this is not an ideological difference. This is how Black and Indigenous people of color see the world. And it's not for you and me, East Asian affluent person, to deny that reality. And we have to get on board. We have to understand what these people are telling us. We have to do the work. We have to get uncomfortable. But I don't see some of you willing to do that uncomfortable work. And until I see that you're willing to go there, I cannot work with you because it hurts me. More that you deny my identity as a woman of color once. You don't know how that hurts me. And I would love for you to actually dig deeper, do the work to understand why that hurts me. That's all I have to say. I really do wish every single one of you on this council is willing to do the work necessary to understand what it is that we're talking about. Because so many of you are not even able to talk about race and racism without getting all bent out of shape. And that's not the way to move forward.
Thank you, Shino. Shino, I can clarify with you offline, but I have not defined anyone on this council's racial identity or ethnic identity. And if you want to discuss that offline with me, we can. If you don't have to. But I do want to just clarify that. Maybe I misheard you, Shino, but I certainly don't presume to tell anyone what their identity is.
No, I'm not going to get
But
into it.
she just told you that's what happened, and you're denying her version of what happened.
Right. I was just going to say, one of the things we should all learn to do, and I'm learning to do this, when somebody tells you that you did something wrong, the first thing to do is reflect on that and then apologize. Even if you don't agree, you apologize. That's what Robin did. That is what you do when somebody says you did something wrong and you hurt them. You're supposed to say, I'm sorry. And that's how that works, Tom. Some people said you hurt them. You may not agree, but the least you can do is, I'm sorry I hurt you. That is what grown-ups do.
So it's okay for you to call Tom not grown up now? Is that what you're saying?
Well, you can be the judge of it. What do grown-ups do when somebody says, you hurt me and you don't apologize?
Okay.
If there are no other council members at this time,
I just want to say
You
one
know,
more thing.
Shino and Robin, you hurt my feelings. You really did by calling me racist. Can I have my apology?
Tom, I didn't call you racist. I think your behavior was racist. I
Okay.
understand that's a hurtful thing to hear. I heard what you said, that you lost sleep, because that's terrible. It's a terrible feeling. I've had that feeling. I've lost sleep over feeling I let down people of color.
Okay.
It's very uncomfortable.
Sorry. I'm
And
sorry
I sat
that you
with
felt
it.
that way.
You know what?
Yeah.
I don't need an apology from you. But you know what? And this is
She
my
knows
final
what you did.
comment, and it's not to you, Tom.
Okay.
It's to Maud. 100 parents in District 2 wrote you a letter, and you didn't respond. And that's fine if you don't want to respond. But I think there's been a lot of chatter on this council about that we have to represent people in District 2, that we're letting down the people in this district if we're not advocating for policies that are immediately obvious in their favor. So I just want to, everyone agrees that parents in District 2 wrote our president a letter, and she responded to Shino twice. She did not respond to the parents in this district who asked her to respond to them.
Okay, I am.
Excuse me, 100 parents slandered me. They put false allegations in a letter that was signed. That's factually correct. Anybody who supports that letter should not. They don't have all the facts. I demanded an investigation into myself from the superintendent of high schools who said an alleged racist incident occurred. She did not respond to me. Twice, actually
She's
3 times
the
I called.
executive superintendent of Manhattan.
Okay.
Excuse me.
Excuse me? Okay, I apologize. I got that incorrect. But when she said that an alleged racist incident occurred, I asked if I could talk to her. She did not respond. Deputy Chancellor Adrian Austin said, acts of racism occurred by a council member. I called her 3 times. I copied you on the emails. She did not respond. So if these are incidents of racism, my question to you is, why aren't they being investigated?
Here's something I've learned. When people of color tell me something racist happens, I listen to them. I don't listen to the white person who says, no, I wasn't racist.
Well, tune into next meeting.
So if there was actually an investigation going on, they wouldn't tell you what was going on until they're done. And they wouldn't, and Maude or anybody else shouldn't really comment officially until the investigation's concluded. That would just compromise the investigation. So if you want to react to it, then you may compromise the investigation, if that's what they're doing. We don't know because nobody's commented.
Well, that being said, Vincent, and I hear what you're saying, if there is some type of investigation, but there could be a response saying, thank you for your letter, we received it, and we're looking into it. I mean, that would be definitely an appropriate response that would not be, you know, too much.
Okay.
But also, you know what, most forms of racism today is not the kind that warrants an investigation. These are called microaggressions. It's all the subtle ways people put down Black, Indigenous, and other people of color. Some of them are even compliments. Oh, I'm East Asian, so I must be good at math. People might think that's a compliment. It actually isn't. That's an act of racism. It's called microaggression. It doesn't warrant an investigation because that's not how this society system is set up. But it's still, it's detrimental to the person who's receiving that kind of microaggression on a daily basis. The fact that a lot of people cross the street when they see a young Black male, that's microaggression. That's not cause for investigation by somebody, but those are actions that are driven by implicit bias that we've lived with for decades, and some of us do not know how to check that. But these are the things you all have to learn. It's not about having an investigation. It's about being curious, being open-minded, and having the desire to understand why our system is the way it is and what it is that we as individuals are doing about it. It's not about attacking other people or calling somebody else racist. It's about looking inward to see what you are doing to perpetuate the system that exists.
My friends like to be treated as people, which is how and I would like to know what microaggressions occurred when I had my friend over in my living room and had her nephew on my lap. What was the microaggression there? I didn't cross the street to get away from my friend. I didn't say that they were bad at math or good at math. They were just in my house. And you consider that a microaggression? I don't understand.
Because
of course you don't understand.
I deserve an apology for that.
Okay, here's
my
the
apologies,
thing.
You know?
The fact is, it's racist, not that you had your friends over or that you had a baby of any race or nationality on your lap. That was not the racist behavior. The racist behavior was making light of segregation, of segregation and likening an integrated living room to having Black friends over. Having Black friends in your living room is not integration. And
it's where it starts. It's where it starts.
Listen, just listen to what I'm saying. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
Because you asked so clearly what was racist about it. Basically, what happened was when you had that baby on your lap and pointed to the idea that your living room was integrated, when we were talking about school integration, is literally belittling and saying, oh, just because I have some Black friends over, I'm not racist, which is also not true. We can all be racist even if we have Black friends, right? I agree on that, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then you laughed as you were saying, well, my living room's integrated. It was in a light, jocular tone that literally belittled the pain of segregation, of hundreds of years of segregation. And if you didn't intend it that way, it actually doesn't matter, because that's how I literally have texts on my phone from friends saying to me, did he possibly just say that? Was he making fun of integration?
Emily,
Okay,
can
yeah,
you listen
hey,
to me
guys,
now? No, 1 second.
Emily,
I suggested that schools should be integrated during elementary school, that you were starting too late. I was not laughing at the thought of integration. I was laughing at the absurdity of your position, is what I was laughing at. Just so you know.
Okay, guys, I would like to make one comment about our council, and then I'm going to invite our superintendent to speak. I am just going to note that Edward Irizarry has left our meeting, and I feel terrible that the environment that was created here made him so uncomfortable that he has left. He has never done that before. And the environment that was created here and the way that he was addressed and spoken to has made this a place where he has left. And I will also just point out, since some of us have acknowledged that we all always have room to learn, and I would agree with that, that continually saying that the letter that Bob Osborne addressed about this incident was unresponded to, when in fact Edward Irizarry, the vice president of this council, wrote a thoughtful response to him, is distressing. I know that Edward and I have worked together closely, and it seemed that it was most appropriate, because so many people have tried to make this personal about me, to have this response come from Edward and to address the concerns that were raised. And I think Edward did an outstanding job addressing the concerns that were raised, and the constant assertion that the letter was unresponded to is not true. Edward, who is the vice president of this council, did respond to the letter. We can all reflect on that. Now I will turn it over to Donalda Chumney, who is the superintendent of District 2.
Thank you for, I'm a co-host tonight, so I can unmute myself. Thank you. I also gave a thumbs up gesture earlier during dialogue about the New York Post, and that was because I figured out how to unmute myself. So for anybody who saw me smile and make a gesture to Michelle, that was because I was figuring out how to unmute myself, not because I was affirming any other piece of the dialogue that was happening. I have thought a lot about our last meeting, and I took the time to write a statement that I would like to share with you all. Our June 11th meeting prompted a lot of reflection for me, and I know I can tell from the emotions that you all have tonight that it prompted significant reflection for you too. And so I would like to share what I have to say. And I'm going to warn you now that it's long. So you might want to take a bathroom break before, or if you need to pause yourself, it's cool, because this meeting is recorded, in all seriousness. Okay, here we go. So first, I've been thinking about the emotions of this time, and this is a very, very strange way to live. And many folks here on our council and in our constituency have kids who graduated, and I think that brings up a bit for people. And so first, I'd like to thank folks for being here tonight and for your larger service to our schools, our community, and our students. I especially want to recognize people who have parents who have kids graduating this past week and this week. Congratulations. I know that this is a time of transition for all of us, and that is especially true of parents of graduates. There are a lot of feelings that come up for me personally when I think about graduations. I think about pride and accomplishment. I also think about excitement and a hopeful yet unknown future. And for me personally, because I always hate saying goodbye, I'm usually in despair about that, because I know that I'm going to be disconnected from the people that I've leaned on and learned from throughout whatever journey that I have taken at school or as a teacher or as a principal. And I think that those emotions are compounded and feel so much bigger than usual this year, because the traditions that we engage and to celebrate these big transitions are not accessible to us right now. And I want to acknowledge that the principal and school communities of our district have done an extraordinary job with these online graduation ceremonies and these video montages and ways to celebrate kids and make them feel unique. I've attended quite a few, and I think that they are really special. And at the same time, they don't offer the same sort of rite of passage that we all kind of were hoping for in the big lead up. And so that feels like a loss. I think that this time has a lot of quiet stillness when we realize that life is continuing to move forward, even though pretty much every day for me, and I'm not sure about for you, but I feel somewhat sure that it feels virtually the same. And our children keep growing and gaining independence, and they're becoming more independent with each other in the world, right? And we too are called to grow into interdependency with others. And that's connected to what I wanted to talk with you about tonight. I would like to share what I envision for our district from a very sincere place and for us in our work together. And please know that much of what I share is contextualized by the current moment in time that we're living in, where activism for racial justice is a visible part of our lives, in the lived experiences of people of color and their experience with police brutality and systemic oppression, on the street with activists, in the media, and in the conversations that each of us have at night around our dinner tables. Our district has hundreds of data points that reflect the joy and strength of our schools. Yet for this conversation, I will need to reference data points that we do not celebrate. For example, in 2019, a Black student in our district was 20% more likely to be suspended than to score a level 4 on the New York State ELA exam. Also in 2019, 1 of 4 students who speaks a language other than English at home within our district had an IEP. There are many other disparities in achievement that I could mention. We must continue to discuss them in order to carve a path forward toward the bright future that each of our students deserve. That said, I need us all to know that our disproportionality data is not static. Just in the past week, I've been reviewing data with the team, and we made a short little video to celebrate the principals today. We are not stuck, nor are we hopeless. Principals, APs, teachers, and school staff are moving forward quickly and effectively to make adjustments to their practice. We are committed to providing a warm, loving, affirming, and academically challenging environment for each one of our 26,500 students. We are seeing strong results. This year, due to very diligently implementing evidence-based practices with a culturally responsive and sustaining lens, we have seen a 200+ student decrease in initial IEP referrals by implementing culturally responsive and sustaining practices and data-based individualization practices for early reading. 150 teachers earned tenure out of a possible 200. And each of those teachers demonstrated ample data illustrating their efficacy with eliminating racial achievement disparities in their classrooms. And that is a specific initiative that we do in our district, and we hold people to a really high standard around that, because we know that it all starts with the relationship between a teacher and a child, and the teacher's beliefs and skillfulness in helping the child reach their full potential. 120+ students this year with special class mandates have flexible class programs for the first time. Principals district-wide participated in an average of 5 intervisits to study equitable practices in the schools of their colleagues. 26,496 of our 26,500 students engaged in remote learning. We only missed 4 kids. That's insane. We should all be throwing confetti right now. 95.4% interacted every day. 94.4% of those students were students of color. 96.4% of those students were white students. Our racial achievement gap for online interaction during remote learning was 2 percentage points, which is one of the lowest data gaps in the city. And we're really, really proud of that. There was a 33% decrease in superintendents and principal suspensions due to CRSE practices from an April year-over-year comparison. Last year in April, we had hit 300 total superintendents and principal suspension. This year in April, we had hit 200, which is a massive, massive decrease. We had a series of special education remote classroom visits, and there were over 70 teachers and APs who showed up to different classes around the district to watch how kids with special needs were being taught by practitioners, because that's been a particularly thorny area of practice in remote learning. And we also have more than 300 teachers signed up for our summer professional learning community opportunities this summer. And at the July NYSEP session, I will share more data points like these. Our NYSEP work and our close look at disproportionality data reveal predictable patterns about what students achieve within our schools according to race, income, home language, housing, and special education designation. These predictable patterns, or as I have referred to them previously as the predeterminism of outcomes, are our responsibility to shatter together. You all, our parent community, our teachers, our school leaders, me, all of us have to shatter these predictable patterns. The predeterminism of education and life outcomes in our district for students of color is centered on the race of students. In order to do this work for the kids whose lives are in our hands, literally, for their families and for the future we are creating for all children and people in the city, we need to be able to have courageous, mutual, respectful conversations about race. In order to address the inequities of our system, we must talk about race, as those inequities are undeniably rooted in race. If we want better lives for all kids, better schools for all kids, if we are to work together for children to remedy the disproportionate outcomes we see in academics and special ed identification, readiness for accelerated coursework, programming into accelerated coursework, discipline and consequence data, if we are to make things right for kids, we adults need to talk to each other about race. Dr. Eddie Fergus has said that we need to permit ourselves to be uncomfortable in the imperfection of this work. We cannot wait to talk until everybody knows all the right words and has assessed the least terrifying public stances to take. These conversations make me feel very vulnerable. Race conversations might make you feel vulnerable too. Race conversations can be difficult and painful. They can also be dignifying, compassion building, and liberating. As a superintendent, I am still learning how to have effective conversations about race in settings like this, where both or all parties do not share the perspective of the other. Places where shared agreements must be built. We must be able to move our relationships into a place where we are able to support each other and work together to improve our schools for kids. I have been in trainings, community spaces, houses of worship, and circles where the safety of the room either made or broke the ability of people to engage, to relate to each other, and to see a path forward to collaboration and mutual dignity. On this council, members each have unique identities, personal histories, and different ways of seeing the world. My perspective as an educator is that in order to go forward, we need to have constructive ways to talk with each other about race. There was an incident 2 weeks ago that brought the need for these norms and protocols to the fore. In order to have courageous conversations about race and to have those conversations yield better life opportunities for all kids, we need to have clear structures and protocols that support our work. We also need to commit to affirming and respecting the dignity of all the people in the room, putting aside personal animosity. The parents of our district are counting on all of us to have the maturity to realize that we are a diverse group coming from completely different places with different life experiences. We are New Yorkers. We were made for this type of constructive dialogue. And we're going to have productive discussions to get things done for kids, teachers, and schools. And I want as many people to be a part of that as possible. My dream is that all of the gatherings in our district are warm and welcoming and affirming and supportive of all parents and students who choose to attend. The statements that were made 2 weeks ago during council member discussion and what I later read of the racially charged and very personal character assassinations that were made in the chat by someone trolling this group, quite interpreted by many of you and by others who contacted me as disrespectful, lacking in compassion for those who suffer the enormous impact of racism in our city and nation, minimizing the needs of people of color for justice, dismissive of our district's commitment to integrate schools, and an attempt to enter others into surrender, retreat, or to provoke others into fury. The social media activity that took place in the wake of our June 11th meeting has broadcast that harm, broadcast the face of a child, accused council members and attendees, including me and other District 2 principals who attended the meeting, who were all muted at the time of council member discussion and did not have the ability to unmute ourselves because we were attendees in the meeting, of racism and complicit silence. This battle amongst people online has prolonged animosity and fueled discord. I see our data for students of color, and I know that our practices need to be addressed. Our teachers need support and development. In some cases, the fundamental way we interact with families as a system must be rethought, and that is what our chancellor has been working so hard to do. We are making enormous strides forward as the data that I shared earlier presents to you, yet we need every ounce of support and energy that each of you can muster to push forward for schools, teachers, children, and families. Many things that took place during the June 11th meeting have taken the focus off where it needs to be the most, which is our most vulnerable children and how they are doing. I understand that you are an autonomous, independent body of parent leaders, and I respect you so much, and I have a deep affection for every single one of you. I see you as my partners. My moral obligation as a member of these meetings, I feel, is to redirect and keep the work on the focus of schools and students. I will not let the work for students, and we cannot let the work for students stall out or implode altogether because we are uncomfortable talking about race with one another or unwilling to extend basic respect during important conversations. If white people like me are to be allies of people of color and people who want the absolute best for all students, we must be willing to display some level of investment in our allyship. And I'm doing that through this statement. And to do that to truly engage in dialogue, we have to call each other into conversations, not push each other out. We must be willing to talk about race. We need structures and protocols to do that. I extend my hand in partnership as I would like for us to be partners in service of the families of our district. And I have said this from the bottom of my heart with the utmost respect and affection for all of you. I hope that you know that I'm not attempting to preach or proselytize or make a statement. I sincerely feel that if we are to work together, which I know that we can, we will really see powerful gains for kids. And I'm looking forward to the next chapter of this because this one has been so, so hard, but honestly, it has taught me so, so much. So for that, I am very grateful. And I thank you for the time to be able to speak. Thank you.
Thank you, Superintendent Chemney. Thank you very much for those words. I believe all the council members who wanted to speak have been able to do so. There are no further matters. Oh, no, Ushma would like to say something. Ushma, are you unmuted?
I thought that that was very well said. I have been quiet because I didn't think that I had really anything to add. This is not the way that I like to work, and I don't think we've been effective. And I'm fairly conflict averse. This makes me extremely uncomfortable. That's my own problem. And I am absolutely pledged to try and do what I can to bridge divides, to learn what I need to learn to do the work, because I'm here for the same reason everybody else is that we care about the kids in this district. And I don't want to be a part of the animosity. I want us to work together. This is not an effective use of any of our time to fling poo at each other in these meetings over and over again. So I'm not going to do it. And if that means that you think that I'm not calling somebody out, it's because that's just not my nature. I'm wounded by what I'm seeing. I think it sucks. And I'd really like us to get back to work and trying to work together. I'm here to work with, and I've voted for and against things in either party. I see this body as being extremely polarized. And I don't think we're going to actually be able to accomplish that much if we continue on in that vein. I want to try and be reasonable. And so I'm here to work with all of you.
Thank you, Ushma. Those are fantastic words to close this meeting on. I concur with everything you just said. And I will and do extend the hand of cooperation and collaboration to every member of this council. At this point, the meeting will be adjourned. Our next annual and calendar meeting is on July 8th. The information's on our website. There will also be an email with all of the Zoom information for that meeting. Thank you all.
Maud, before we go, I have one thing that we should be discussing, which is Superintendent Evaluation. It's supposed to be due tomorrow. I think we'll have a 1-month extension, but we need to submit something by July 31st. So we should put it on the calendar meeting or the working business meeting agenda for July.
Yes, I spoke to Michelle Chang about it, and it will be on our agenda for July 8th. If there's nothing else from any other council members, good night, everyone.